my third visit in just over a year to discuss a wide range of issues with the leaders of Sri Lanka. I depart this evening confident that the visit has strengthened our partnership with Sri Lanka. I appreciate the many useful discussions I had both here in the capital and during a trip yesterday to the former war zone in the north. Just over a year has now passed since the end of the armed conflict and since the Secretary General's visit in May 2009. That visit demonstrated the UN's commitment to work with Sri Lanka. The Secretary General's joint statement with President Rajapaksa provided an excellent framework for cooperation, focusing particularly on three key post-war challenges: the return and resettlement of IDPs, political reconciliation, and human rights accountability. I had a good meeting yesterday with President Rajapaksa and have also held discussions with cabinet officials responsible for foreign relations, defense, economic development, as well as with the Attorney General. I have been able to meet with the leaders of the political opposition, Tamil and Muslim representatives, civil society organizations, including human rights and women's groups, and with members of the diplomatic corps. My trip to Mulativu district provided a first-hand look at the continuing efforts to resettle the hundreds of thousands of people who were forced to flee their homes during the conflict. The United Nations agencies and their dedicated staff, national and international, are playing a significant part in that effort under the leadership of Resident Coordinator Neil Bune. They're working tirelessly under difficult conditions to help the people of Sri Lanka normalize and improve their lives. I will report to the Secretary General upon return to New York, but let me now share with you some of the key points I take away from the visit. First, the urgency of taking steps towards political reconciliation. Bitterness and division that took decades to accumulate will not dissolve overnight in Sri Lanka. But now is the time to make major efforts to begin healing these wounds. The end of the conflict must be followed by a political solution that addresses the issues and grievances that fueled the war. The government has taken some measures to indicate a shift from war footing to a peacetime mindset, and we encourage further steps in this direction. The partial relaxation of emergency decrees was an important action. Opportunities could be taken to diminish the military presence in former military areas. It is also critical to safeguard the independence of institutions, freedom of the press, and work of non-governmental organizations. All this sends an important message. A second priority is to successfully conclude the resettlement process and bring economic opportunity to the former war zones in the north. The United Nations appreciates the government's efforts thus far, supported by the international community. Much has been achieved in moving people from the camps back home, as well as improving the living conditions of those who have returned. We also welcome the greater ease with which UN agencies and NGOs can now work in the former conflict zones and the important progress in clearing mines from these areas. In the areas of Mulativu that I traveled to yesterday, local officials were working energetically on behalf of the returnees. Children are attending school, and people have food and access to basic health care.